Word that has been thrown around loosely for years now, but it's seen a lot more use in recent times given the situation with the Epic Games Store exclusives. And it's a word that essentially, when it's used, is saying that somebody is being unreasonable because they're blinded by their own selfishness. Sometimes, you know what, sure, it can be the right word to use, it can be accurate, but quite often it's not. Quite often it's a word that's used to shut down debates, to lock people out, and when it's combined with other words like, say, toxic, it's creating a convenient boogeyman. Yet, what do you find when you look at the big picture? Well, I think you find that, well, yeah, fans can act in an entitled manner sometimes. So too can game developers. So too can the journalists who cover the industry professionally. And today that means that we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, this has been an issue for a long time.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another super fun deep dive episode.
Okay,
How's it
here
got
we
this
go.
bad lately? I mean, sure, the internet's always been dramatic enough, hasn't it? But as of late, it's been rough. Now, sure, it's a broader cultural issue, but there's no doubt that the Epic Store exclusivity, that has led to another wave in all of this stuff. First though, before we get into this, site changes have heavily decreased recommendations of content like what you're about to watch.
Why are people mad about the Epic Store?
Is favoring subscriptions and ringing the bell.
I don't get it.
As shown by the new numbers that creators are being shown. So, if you would like to stay updated on gaming news, then hit subscribe and ring that bell. It seems like we're going to be on your recommended feed a little bit less moving forward. So, let's see if we can increase the percentage.
So why do people not like it? Support is bad? So Steam support. I've heard a million bad things about Steam support. It's an inferior Steam? So like the program isn't good? I don't get it.
On that
yeah,
bar.
I don't know.
That said, let's get into the video. So I'm covering today's topic from three perspectives. I think three perspectives that pretty much cover the main ones. Of course, I'm a games consumer. I'm also somebody who covers the industry professionally on this channel, and I'm also a developer. When developers talk about struggling to keep the lights on, well, I've been there. I funded my company with my own savings. I know how terrifying it is, like how terrifyingly fast money leaves your bank account when you're funding a 4 to 6 person team. I've made wrong decisions that have cost me a good bit of money. I get it. Game development is hard. Now, our studio's fine. We're coming through the other side. You'll see our work soon, but that is a story for another day. And I bring this up. I bring up my experience doing development stuff because I constantly see my fellow developers treat our audience with disdain. I see them display the exact same entitlement that they decry those who play games for. And what happens when traditional media steps in to cover this? Well, it's not particularly good. They often also act in an entitled and unreasonable manner. Less so for new media, although I do often see pundits either play dumb to please a crowd or just be plain bad at their job, not doing proper research. I mean, the lack of mentioning the China-like video game playtime restrictions suggested by the UK Parliament's Game Gambling Commission, that's a great example of really kind of irresponsible punditry. The thing is that almost nobody is coming off from this modern situation looking quite good. But to start, we're going to look at those who cast the first stone. And recent events have given us a prime example here. The Ooblets situation. What's fascinating here is how close they were to giving an honest and respectful explanation of their situation, and then how much they ruined it by essentially lacing their post with bile. And what's great is that I've got an example of another developer doing the same thing, but doing it well. So the Ooblets developers made a post announcing their Epic Games Store
a game about farming and collecting creatures. Oh, that sounds great. It's basically Animal Crossing, I'm sure. Yeah, it's Animal Crossing.
And they started off by poking a bit of fun at Epic and all their Fortnite dances, and then they got into the real stuff. In the Why'd We Do This section, they pretty much say it perfectly. They say that Epic was a big decision that they didn't take lightly, but that the numbers made sense. They said that Epic doesn't have a great market share right now, so instead they offer a minimum sales guarantee. They say this minimum sales guarantee matched what they wanted to earn from the game across all stores. They talked about how this deal removed a lot of stress and uncertainty, as they now know they can make it to launch and will not have to worry about keeping the lights on, and that they're able to afford some extra help in making the game, something that will have a ramp-up time that will delay the game a little, but will result in it having more features and more content. And when I read it out like that, I think it sounds perfectly reasonable to most people, and sure, it might be a bit inconvenient and not ideal,
There's
but
nothing
from their
wrong with
perspective, that does make a lot of sense.
Yeah,
but you see, here's the problem. I've left out some things. You see, when they say gamers, they say gamers TM, you know, like a trademark. That's pretty othering. It's a bit nasty, don't you think? And
Epic paying for PC exclusives has become the latest thing gamers have gotten angry about, which I'll talk more about a bit further down. So you can already tell they're mad about this, okay? Like, they're always mad. They bought the game. Yeah, I don't know. Let's just take a look at this. All right, gamers TM.
sure, it could be a little bit of light-hearted, honest ribbing, but when you look further down their post, well, that does change. They're aware of the backlash, and they talk about some of the common criticisms. And you know what? Their core points are reasonable enough, but they say this. Okay. Feeling like you're owed the product of other people's work on your terms or else you'll steal it is the epitome of the word entitlement that people use to discuss immature, toxic gamers. They then go on to suggest that instead people are angry at climate change, human rights abuses, the new Twitter UI, and the last season of Game of Thrones. I mean, sure, jokingly, but their point being, hey, it's a game, so let's not get worked up about it. And when I looked at this post, I was just amazed. Because logically, they're reasonable about their points, why they went with Epic, but they managed to throw all of that out the window when they decided to lace their post with venomous, othering language. They talked about how great their community is, and then they say gamers TM. They conjure up the tired entitlement language, and they purposefully make those who disagree with them the other group. And this othering is the core of what I think is destroying video games discourse. Instead of having an open and honest discussion that's not preemptively aggressive, we're instead seeing people pretty much lob mud at each other, all while claiming the moral high ground. That's pretty much...
I can get where they're coming from, right? Because, like, obviously, like, any game does anything, right? Like, WoW does anything, and people go absolutely fucking berserk. Like, they get so mad, they get so angry, they're harassing devs, they're saying a bunch of bad stuff. Like, I think the best example of this is, like, Holinka, right? Like, how can you be Holinka and not fucking hate your consumers, right? You can't be Holinka and not fucking hate the people that play WoW, right? That's really all there is to it. And to me personally, I can see how that makes sense, right? You have people that... And it's also, like, I mean, complaining about the issue is that the sphere in which people complain about issues, right? It's okay to complain about something and be like, okay, well, you know what? I don't really like this change, but I think that people take it way, way too fucking far. They make, you know, they make accusations like that, personal accusations, personal insults and everything like that, and they take it out of the sphere of, you know, just the game, and they make it personal. And I think that's something that happens all the time, and it happens on both sides. But the consumers and the people like that do have to do a better job at not really promoting that type of behavior, because I think it just creates an adversarial relationship between the players and the developers, and it makes everything worse.
What's been done here, and I think it's remarkably hypocritical. Yeah. We're seeing people decry toxicity while acting in a pretty toxic manner themselves. Why does this happen? Well, the entire point here is the othering language. It dehumanizes individuals who disagree into a broader group, it slaps some labels on them, and then that pretty much gives, in the eyes of the people who are slinging the mud, free rein to lash out.
And that's what they fucking do. This is exactly what they fucking do now. Is they put a label on somebody. They're like, oh, well, this person is whatever, fill in the blank. And because they're this thing, I can say anything that I want to them. It doesn't matter. And it's basically they're giving themselves licenses to bully certain types of people based off of how they label them. That's pretty much what happens.
It's predicated on the disgust reflex, and while it would be easy to bring up some historical examples of this stuff not really working out too well on a cultural level, I think that might be a little bit much given what we're talking about here. Here's an example, though, of a developer being far more reasonable and making a very similar point. Industries of Titan signed on with Epic. They said it was a timed exclusive, but that they did not want to downplay the inconvenience of their decision. They went on to explain the logistics for their team and the scope of the game, and how Epic will help them realize their game, with their goal being to launch version 1 of their game in both Steam and Epic. They said that the game will be better because of the increased resources, because of the Epic deal, but they ended by saying that they know this is going to inconvenience some of their customers, and they understand if people are no longer interested in their game. And whether you agree or disagree with their decision, I think we can all agree that was a clear and respectful statement. They did not downplay people's concerns, nor did they pull the usual, sorry if this inconvenienced you. They knew fine well that for a group of the people reading their post, it was an inconvenience. And that's how to do it. And if memory serves, the developers of Satisfactory were similarly clear and respectful when they explained their situation. Indeed, I think that
I think that's basically what it comes down to, is that as soon as things devolve into personal insults, the other side is going to do the same fucking thing, right? But if you can keep things to be reasonable and everything like that, I don't think that it's going to be as bad. But that's basically what happens, is that as soon as things become personal, then it just gets worse from there. That's all it really comes down to.
Developers of Ooblets unfortunately acted in a rather entitled and toxic manner. Many game developers seem to basically feel entitled to the ideal customer. Going by the Ooblets post, some developers watching this may think that I'm just another entitled customer or angry YouTuber, gamer bro, but that's not the case. I do get it. Like, we've had some assistance from a local government fund, but I've put a lot of my own money into keeping our studio alive through the harder times. I know what it's like to worry about keeping people in a job, knowing that you are their sole source of income. That is a lot of stress. Now, our successes on YouTube have meant that we've not really had to worry about keeping the lights on so much in recent times, but believe me, before YouTube was the size that it is now, we had some very, very close calls. And because of this, I actually entirely understand why a team in a different circumstance would sign with Epic. Some people may say it's because a developer has no faith in their game actually selling, so they're greedily grabbing all the money now from Epic. And I don't really think that's a particularly fair statement, because if you can't get the funding to finish your game will never exist. And I do think that one thing the gaming
sometimes you have to make
maybe
concessions.
don't appreciate that much from a developing perspective, because they never see it, is the failure rate of games. There's actually a massive survivor bias in gaming. You only see the projects that succeed. And for every game that you see in Steam, there are far more in Steam that have just slipped under the radar with barely any views. Again, my experience talking to other developers in our local industry, I've seen real-world examples of this happening. Going around the business area of Gamescom.
So I'm gonna pause this right here. What's wrong with the Epic Store? Like, I still don't understand it. Why is the Epic Store fundamentally bad? But why is it bad? It's not Steam. It's spyware. Exclusivity. So because people just hate Fortnite. From my perspective, it seems like people don't like the Epic Store because it's not Steam, because it's connected to Fortnite. They don't like Fortnite, and they don't want to have to download 2 programs and 2 apps to run programs. That is what it seems to me. I've used the Epic Store before. I have the Epic Launcher. Everything about it seems to work fine. It's used in China. Yeah, China owns it. Okay, well, I mean, do you really think that, like, they're not gonna, like, Steam isn't gonna sell you information and this other place will? Like, I don't know. I feel like I just assume that any company is going to sell your information for the right price. It's just the fact of life, okay? It's not on par with Steam. People are using Steam off. Shit, it's really hard for me to read all this. You guys are very opinionated about this. They banned another streamer for buying games. I don't even know about that. I can't even see that. Nothing specifically to having Steam. It's just Origin and PC. Yeah, I think it's also annoying, right? It's the same thing that I talked about before with, like, now you've got to have, like, you got to have Netflix, you've got to have Hulu, there's HBO Go, there's, like, all of these different services that you've got to pay for. And the last thing that I want to see is another service. And I think people can categorically dislike, oh, fuck, now we've got to deal with another service launcher. I can understand that 100%. I agree with you. But things that are fundamentally bad about Epic, it seems like a lot of the things that are bad about the Epic Store are not actually things that have to do with the Epic Store. They're things that have to do with the perception of the Epic Store and what it relates to and what is on the Epic Store, aka Fortnite, right? It's just less feature. Well, who cares? I mean, it shouldn't really matter. I mean, like, if people want to put their shit on there, that it's up to them, right? I don't know. I don't think that devs should be expected to put their stuff on Steam. I don't really think that's fair to them. It doesn't have reviews. Yeah, that's good, because there's no other way to get reviews for games. I don't think that devs should be expected to put their games on Steam. I think it's just kind of ridiculous.
Seeing other indies pitching myself, talking to publishers, I see that failure rate. Indeed, we have 2 dead game projects in our past. And when you get down to the logistics of it, the amount of time that one has to spend securing funding, that's often one of the things that gets in the way of actually making the game like the most. So for some teams, signing a deal with a platform does make a lot of sense. It's not them being greedy, often it's just them putting their employees and their families first, understanding that developing with a clear budget and a clear plan is a better path. Personally, obviously, I do think that Epic exclusivity should pretty much be your last resort if you can't get other things set in place. But clearly, for some developers, it can be a valuable solution, and it can be the difference between a game existing or not. Ideally, this is the kind of place where gaming audiences could be a bit more empathetic and reasonable, but here's the big challenge here. When the developers are acting in a way like how the Ooblets developers did, it's kind of unreasonable to expect them to be. We live in the real world, and developers have to understand that as much as they might have good logic behind what they're saying, if they hurl stones, they're not going to make friends. And if you hurl stones...
So same thing whenever I make fun of people on like the internet, right? If I make fun of people on Reddit, or I make fun of people on the general forums, it would be weird for me to do that and then be upset whenever they say shit bad to me, right? Because it's like, you don't talk shit about other people and then expect them not to say anything bad about you, right? I mean, that's the way it goes. I mean, if I'm pulling up people's armories and I'm making fun of them for being dog shit, and then they're gonna turn around and make fun of me for, you know, not having any fucking hair, right? That's just the way that it goes. Is that a different thing because it's like personal versus your video game character? Yeah, it's different, but it's basically the same thing, right? If you create animosity with somebody else, you should expect to get at least some of that animosity back. Now, it does matter who started it, but at the same time, like, it's like, if you want to treat gamers and put gamers in quotation marks and everything like that, then yeah, you're going to expect to have people that just don't want to be treated like some sort of other, like some sort of bad person or whatever. You're going to expect to have people like that get pissed off about it. Of fucking course they will. Come on.
Your audience, yes, the very people who you should be making your game for, the people who, I mean, it's all about the customer, then it's not going to end very well, is it? Just look at how well CD Projekt Red have done by just being reasonable with their audience. And the cultural rift that perpetuates this, it really does extend past just developers and gamers. It seemingly has also extended to many of those who cover our industry, with many outlets being outright hostile, or at the very least, having a really condescending snark be built into their work. And as much as, yeah, I'd say that
well, they have a fucking agenda. Like, half of the people that write these articles, it seems very clear to me that they have an agenda whenever they write these articles saying bad things about these games. They want to use their position as being a journalist, or whatever they want to call it, to push some sort of agenda that they have. And I understand that, like, it's kind of reasonable. Everybody should have, like, ideals and everything like that. But at the same time, I think that whenever you do, and you're writing things, especially for like reviews for games or something like that, you should try not to let your own personal biases and everything like that and personal agendas influence the way that you review the game. It just seems like the fair thing to do. You should be as unbiased as possible and come into it with an open mind.
Kotaku can produce excellent journalism with, say, their recent BioWare pieces.
True.
They're also quite guilty of this. There's a lot of talking down to people. They then typically seem to act surprised when they receive backlash for the bad faith manner in which they sometimes behave. Again, the topic of entitlement comes up here. As much as they may decry gaming audiences for being entitled and toxic, well, they themselves often act in a toxic and entitled way, throwing stones when none need be thrown. Games media, you're not entitled to have what you say go unchallenged. You're not entitled to act in a condescending and toxic manner free from pushback. You have to be reasonable. And for the rest of us as consumers, well, I think, we're not entitled to developers doing exactly what we wish. I think if they diverge from our interests, well, I think that's when it's time to move on to greener, more productive pastures. We do need to think about our own behavior and ensure that we're not acting in a hypocritical manner here. And really, when I look at a lot of the developer snark that I see, at a lot of the snarky articles that I see, I think this is what's been forgotten. Regardless of whether somebody is a dev, a journalist, or a player of games, they are a person.
Here's the fucking thing, dude, is you have these fucking people that play these games and insert themselves into the gaming community, and they don't even play fucking video games. Like, for me, for example, like, I don't go around and talk a lot about, you know, is the new Call of Duty good or bad? I'm going to say that, yeah, it looks boring, right? But I'm not going to really get very specific into it because I don't fucking know. For example, like, I didn't go and cast a world first race because I didn't mythic raid. I had no fucking idea what I was talking about. You have these people that come into the space, they want to change the space, and they are the ones that are the other. Everybody else has just been sitting around playing video games, having fun, and then you have this fucking jackass Agenda Andy come in, and they want to change everything up. They've got a laundry list of problems with current games, and then they get surprised whenever some people say, fuck you, we don't want to deal with your laundry list of complaints. If you don't like the space, go somewhere else. Like, it's completely different. And yeah, all of this shit, right? If you don't even play the fucking games, of course gamers are going to be defensive whenever people come into their space and try to change it. Like, fucking duh. Like, yeah, of course. Imagine somebody goes into your house and starts rearranging all your furniture. You're like, wait, I thought my chair was supposed to be over there. Like, oh no, we don't like that chair anymore. That chair's made out of wood and we want to preserve the environment. So we gave you this piece of shit instead. You know, you're going to have to sit on this metal chair now. You're going to have to sit on a stump. You know, like, no, fuck that, man. Like, if people want to do this kind of stuff, they should expect to get pushback. That's all there is to it. Stand your ground. Well, yeah, you have people that are coming from outside the space, they're coming into the space to tell these people who are just there that everything they're doing is wrong. Like, yeah, of course they're going to be defensive.
Just people with different perspectives. This industry is at its best when we're treating each other with respect and dignity as people.
Yeah,
it is possible for two people to be entirely correct in what they say, but just have opposing goals or opposing perspectives.
That's true.
In these cases, what are we to do? Are we to throw stones, throw muck at each other? No. Are we to say gamers TM? That's not helpful. Tim Sweeney, maybe you don't tweet that. Jason.
In response to community feedback, I have reviewed the tone of the Ooblets exclusivity announcement and wish to make the following official statement. It was awesome. Oh, right. Okay. So this is what they do, right? And like, you guys will see this. Like, once you see it, then you know it. These game developers, right, and game journalists, they suck the dick of the publishers and the developers because that way they hope the publishers and the developers will do them favors later on. That's why they do it. They're not doing it because they actually believe it. They're doing it just for to fulfill, basically, they're doing it for money, basically. Yeah, that's all there is to it. Epic CEO. Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, like, this is like an example. I don't know who this guy is, but yeah. Well, what a surprise. Somebody who signs their game to be exclusive on his platform, he's going to say positive things about them and defend them.
I can't believe it.
Can you believe that's disgusting, isn't it? Like, can you believe that people who are business partners are going to defend each other publicly? Like, this is completely meaningless.
Schreier, maybe you don't tweet that, or maybe you reword it to be a bit more diplomatic. So to conclude, being reasonable is what's important. Be it developer, journalist, YouTuber, game consumer, I'm sure we're all guilty of not being reasonable from time to time. And when I think we look around us, it's pretty clear that this is all playing into a really big, bad feedback loop that is just making games discourse worse. I mean, man, I look at some of these dev posts and articles, and it's just depressing. It doesn't need to be that way. So let's not immediately assume that developers are acting out of sheer greed, but equally, let's not lace our articles with venom. Let's not talk down to our audiences. Let's not be pointlessly nasty, which is what I think the Ooblets developers and recently just a lot of devs and press have been doing. And look, I don't think this will be a popular video. I've criticized just about everybody here, but to be clear, as a developer, as somebody who covers the news, and as a consumer, I've been guilty of just about everything I've mentioned in this video. And this video is by no means perfect. My best hope is that you can advance these ideas past where I've taken them in this video. This has got to be an ongoing discussion. I would love to hear what you have to say. And just where do you think we're at with discourse and gaming? How do you think it can be better? I would love to know. So thank you very much for watching this video. There'll be a lot of content on this channel this week, so you know, consider hitting that sub button or maybe ringing that bell. But with that, thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.
Okay. So I don't know. I think that's why devs lash out on Twitter. Well, I understand like being a dev. I get it. Honestly, the way that I think that they should handle it is like the devs just shouldn't have Twitters, right? Because people are going to give them negative feedback. They're going to hear bad things about their game. This dude spent how many fucking hours on this game, and then it comes out and somebody talks some shit. It's going to make them mad. Like, if you can't deal with it, you just shouldn't even have a Twitter. Don't read the feedback. Just develop the game. I think that's definitely the way that you should look at it. Because like, you can't expect every single person to be able to parse through a bunch of negative feedback and to be able to interpret it in a positive way. Most people can't do that. Let's just be honest. Most people can't. They get really pissed off, and that's the way that it goes. And I need a safe space, incel logic? Well, no, it's not incel logic at all. I mean, the thing is that not everybody wants to open themselves up to harassment from thousands of anonymous people on the internet. Nobody wants that. So it's very easy to say that, oh, it's a big deal or it's not a big deal. But like, nobody in here has probably ever experienced that themselves. So it's hard, especially in like to put something out, spend like hundreds of hours onto something, like weeks after week, months after months, make sacrifices to make something happen. You finally put it out and people just shit all over it. Obviously, you're gonna deal with it in probably a negative way, right? It's the same as if you cook somebody dinner and they say they don't like it and you're slightly annoyed. Well, imagine if you cook 1 million people dinner and they all throw the shit on the floor, and then they shit on the floor and they say it's better than your shit that's on the floor. You're going to be pissed. Okay, that's just the way that it goes.